Imagine waking up every morning, knowing that before the sun sets, you might be dead, not because of war, not because of disease, but because thousands of strangers were waiting to watch you fight. For the gladiators of ancient Rome, death was entertainment. Some were captured in war, others were slaves. Some had committed terrible crimes, and a few chose this brutal life willingly, hoping to earn wealth, fame, or even freedom. Inside the mighty Colosseum, the crowd didn't simply want victory, they wanted blood. Every cheer, every roar, could mean the difference between life and death. But the greatest battle a gladiator faced didn't begin inside the arena. It began long before the gates ever opened. Long before a gladiator stepped into the arena, his fate had already changed forever. Most gladiators were never born dreaming of glory. Many were prisoners captured during Rome's endless wars. Others were slaves sold into brutal training schools. Some were criminals sentenced to fight as punishment. To Rome, they were not heroes. They were property, bought, sold, and trained for one purpose: to entertain the people. Yet not every gladiator arrived in chains. A small number of free Roman citizens volunteered to fight, crushed by debt, desperate for money, or hungry for fame. They willingly entered a life where every battle could be their last. The moment they entered a gladiator school, their old identity disappeared. Their hair was cut. Their belongings were taken away. Their future belonged to someone else. The owner of the school invested money in them, not out of kindness, but because a skilled fighter was worth a fortune. Some gladiators survived for years. Others died in their very first fight. No one knew which fate awaited them, because in ancient Rome, the arena showed mercy to no one, and every new gladiator understood one terrifying truth: he had not been chosen to live, he had been chosen to fight. Not every gladiator died inside the arena. Many were broken long before they ever stepped into one. Their new home was called the Ludus, a gladiator training school unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Its gates were locked, its walls were high, and once you entered, there was almost no way out. Every day began before sunrise. The sound of a horn echoed through the barracks, and the fighters rushed into another day of relentless training. They ran until their legs gave out. They lifted heavy wooden shields that weighed even more than real ones. They practiced with wooden swords, again and again, until every movement became instinct. Mistakes were punished immediately. A slow reaction, a weak strike, or a moment of hesitation could earn a brutal beating from the trainers. Because in the arena, one mistake meant death. Not every gladiator fought the same way. Some carried enormous shields and short swords. Others fought with long spears. Some wore heavy armor, while others entered battle with almost nothing to protect them. Each fighter trained for a specific role, preparing to face opponents with completely different weapons and fighting styles. Surprisingly, their diet was carefully controlled. They ate large amounts of barley, beans, vegetables, and bread, not to build beauty, but to build endurance. The thick layer of body fat even helped protect them from shallow cuts during battle. Every bruise, every scar, every drop of sweat prepared them for a single terrifying moment. The day the arena gates would open, and thousands of Romans would decide whether they lived or died. Winning inside the arena could change a man's life. A gladiator who survived enough battles became more than a fighter. He became a celebrity. His name spread across Rome. Children admired him. Crowds cheered as he entered the Colosseum. Some wealthy Romans even collected paintings and small statues of their favorite gladiators. To the audience, these men were the greatest athletes of their age. Victorious gladiators received valuable prizes: gold coins, fine weapons, expensive gifts, and sometimes enough money to buy a better future. The most successful fighters attracted the attention of noble families. Women admired their courage, their strength, and the fame that surrounded them. But behind every victory was a terrible price. Every scar told a story: broken bones, deep sword wounds, permanent injuries. Many gladiators lived with constant pain. Even those who survived dozens of battles carried both physical and emotional scars. Yet one dream kept them fighting: freedom. After years of courage, a gladiator could receive a wooden sword known as the Ludus. It wasn't made of gold. It wasn't covered in jewels. But to a gladiator, it was more valuable than anything in the Roman Empire. Because the Ludus meant one thing. He was no longer a slave. He was finally a free man. For many, that single moment was worth risking everything. For a gladiator, the arena was more than a battlefield. It was a stage where every victory was celebrated, and every mistake could be fatal. Long before sunrise, crowds poured into the Colosseum. Merchants shouted, children laughed, nobles arrived in elegant robes. More than 50,000 people filled the giant stone amphitheater, waiting for one thing: blood. Beneath the arena, hidden below the wooden floor, the gladiators stood in silence. Some whispered prayers. Others tightened the straps of their armor. Many knew they would never walk out alive. Then, the great gates opened. Blinding sunlight flooded the tunnel. The roar of the crowd crashed over them like thunder. One by one, the fighters stepped into the arena. Across the sand, another gladiator waited. Sometimes he carried a sword and a massive shield. Sometimes a trident and a weighted net. Every fight was different. Every opponent required a different strategy. There were no second chances. The crowd watched every movement, every strike, every wound, every drop of blood that stained the golden sand. When one fighter finally collapsed, the entire arena erupted with cheers. But the battle wasn't always over. The defeated gladiator looked toward the emperor. His fate now rested in a single decision. Would mercy be granted, or would death become the day's final spectacle? For the Romans, these games displayed courage, strength, and the power of the empire. But for the men standing in the arena, it was never about glory. It was about surviving. One more fight, one more sunrise, one more chance to return home alive. For nearly 700 years, the roar of the Colosseum echoed across Rome. Millions watched gladiators fight. Thousands lost their lives, and generations believed the games would last forever. But history always changes. As the Roman Empire grew weaker, its endless wars drained its wealth. The great arenas became increasingly expensive to maintain. At the same time, a new faith was spreading across the empire. Christianity taught that human life was sacred, not entertainment. Many religious leaders openly condemned the bloody spectacles. Slowly, public opinion began to change. The cheers grew quieter. The crowds became smaller. Then, in the early 5th century, Emperor Honorius officially brought the gladiator games to an end. The arena gates that had opened for centuries closed forever. The crowds disappeared. The sand no longer turned red with blood. The age of the gladiators had come to an end. But although the battles ended, their stories never did. Even today, more than 2,000 years later, the world still remembers the men who walked into the arena, knowing every fight could be their last. History remembers the gladiators as fearless warriors who stood beneath the roaring crowds and fought without fear. But behind every legendary battle was a human being, a son, a father, a brother, or a man whose freedom had been stolen. Some fought for glory, some fought for survival, and many simply fought because they had no other choice. When we think of ancient Rome, we often imagine the mighty Colosseum, the cheering crowds, and the clash of steel. But perhaps the greatest lesson isn't about victory. It's about the price people were forced to pay for someone else's entertainment. The gladiators may have vanished, but their courage, their suffering, and their unforgettable stories still echo through history, because legends are not remembered for the battles they won. They are remembered for the battles they were willing to fight.